Did that happen with one of the presidents, maybe Bush, or what they? Yeah.
Alrighty. Is she in?
How many people do we have on the board now? I noticed it says 4 plus 2 alternatives.
I thought it was
but,
6 plus 2.
You have 4.
You're
I
on,
must have read
Martha.
it wrong.
Okay.
Evan left.
We're allowed up to
We
to
are
5
live.
plus the 2 alternates.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Housing Committee. This is the Town of Barnstable Housing Committee. Today is Thursday, December 19th, and our meeting is for 4 p.m. This meeting will be replayed via Xfinity Channel 8 or High Definition Channel 1072. It may also be accessed via the Government Access Channel, live video on demand, archives on the Town of Barnstable website. This meeting is now called to order. I'm the chair. My name is Hilda Hay. And I'm gonna just allow each and everyone to introduce themselves because we have one special member this evening. We have a new member, very special member, and we will let each of you introduce yourself.
I'm Don Lynd. I was in the Army a long time, and I practiced law for even longer. It's about a judge advocate that they don't let judges, they don't let their uniform lawyers in the Army anywhere near aircraft or artillery.
I'm Corey Pacheco. I'm Senior Planner with Planning and Development.
And I'm Jillian Douglas. I work for the Barnstable Affordable Housing and Growth and Development Trust Fund.
There we
Give
go.
you some background on that.
I'm Chris Beach, the newest member of this committee.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for being part of this committee. We are excited to have you on board, and hopefully we can work even harder. We have more power, more manpower. So the notice of recording, this meeting of Barnstable Housing Committee is being recorded and broadcast on the Town of Barnstable Government Access Channel. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the chair must inquire whether anyone else is recording this meeting, and if so, to please make their presence known. So far, nobody, so just us. And we're gonna start here with public comment. Is there any? We don't have any member of the public present at this moment, but is there any member that has anything that they would like to add at this point? Okay, moving right along, that was a no. We're gonna have some updates from Planning and Development Department, and that is from Jillian.
Oh, okay, so I'm first. I'm actually representing from the Affordable Housing Trust. And my attendance here tonight was just sort of to go over what trusts do. So this is kind of a general information, but I really don't want to bore people, so I am a paper person, and I wanted you each to have handouts so that you have reference if you really want to delve into what a trust can do. I'll tell you the basic thing that a trust does is it receives money from the town, either through the general fund or, in our case, mostly from the Community Preservation Act. So those are funds that are collected through a surcharge on real estate transfers. And so those monies come to the town. They're held in a specific fund, CPA fund. The CPA fund has basically 4 purposes. It's affordable housing is one of those purposes. Historic preservation is another, and open space and recreation. And in many towns, open space and recreation are seen as one purpose, but they can be distinct. It's kind of 4 buckets, if you will, of funding. And the balance of CPA funds can go to administration of those purposes. so oversight of different projects or acquisitions that the town does. So the Affordable Housing Trust, which receives money from the CPA, is bound by the purposes that the CPA, the Community Preservation Act has certain things you can and can't do in relation to community housing. So we are, as the trust receives most of its funding from the Community Preservation Act, we are bound by what those funds can be used for.
Is the funds that you received a 1-year grant subject to being zero the next year by the CPA folks? Is it fenced at all, I guess, the money?
It is, the act itself says that 10% of the funds that are collected go to each one of those purposes. So in other words, 10% of the total collections could be made available to housing. But the town, the applications to the CPA, people can ask for more funding. They can go back with specific projects. So in other words, if housing didn't have any requests that year, then that would mean that there would be more available in the following year. So those funds roll over.
Okay, but if there were housing needs, it would not be cut, just, I guess willy-nilly,
No, under the Community Preservation Act, those, that 10% is like a minimum that is going to each of those purposes.
Oh, okay.
So it's gonna sit there and it's gonna roll over in the event that the town doesn't, or the CPA doesn't allocate those in any certain year. The Community Preservation Committee in Barnstable has been very generous to the trust in the sense that every time that they have gone to ask for funding, they have provided it.
And I've forgotten, is the CPA funding 2% of the deeds?
I believe it's 3%.
3%,
Yeah,
okay.
so it's a transfer fee that's on top of,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
part of it's not a real estate tax, but it's a transfer fee.
Okay, well, nobody wants to say the word tax, but I understand.
So I guess in terms of what the trust or a trust, an affordable housing trust, one of the primary purposes is it's intended to be a little bit more agile, more to be able to respond more quickly than the general fund and the entire town fund. So these allocated funds that come under the trust, they can purchase and expend monies quicker than going back to a town meeting, and in our case, a town council request. So the primary thing that they can, that most towns use them for is for acquisition of either sites or units. And the benefit of a trust holding property, if you will, so those might be units or land that's allocated for housing, would be that they can hold that for a shorter term. In other words, they can turn around quickly, they can buy it quickly, acquire it quickly, and then either develop it, they do a request for proposal if they're going to be doing a development, or if it's, let's say it was an affordable housing unit that the town sought to purchase, if it needed renovation or substantial rehabilitation, a trust could have a program where it did that. It purchases, upgrades, and then turns around and sells that property to with a deed restriction on it. Does that, any questions about how that works? Or so those are affordable housing deed restrictions, and under both the Community Preservation Act and the Housing Trust Fund, we're looking to have those deed restrictions be perpetual. Under the Community Preservation Act, they have to be perpetual. Under the trust, they can be a shorter term, so they don't have to be permanent. And one of the things that's fairly recent is the idea of building wealth through owning property. So you and I, our homes, if we own one, is a way to build wealth. So there's a program that the state instituted called the Commonwealth Builders Program. And that program has a shorter term deed restriction. So as opposed to being perpetually held, it might be a shorter term. So say instead of having to hold it for 99 years to keep it affordable, a person owning a Commonwealth Builder unit might be able to hold that for 15 years. After the 15th year, they may be able to borrow against it more freely, a higher amount of equity.
That's always been my concern with these, these restrictions for life into perpetuity. People don't have any reason to keep the property up, and they're never going to get any money. It seems to me it's the shorter term. To me, makes some sense. I don't mean 6 months, but something that they can build their wealth. They can put a new roof on. Yes. They can put windows. Rather than if it's in the restrictions in perpetuity, it's always like with a landlord. Why should I fix up his property? So it makes some sense, but are there any rules on the amount of
well, I guess what I would say is ownership units that are permanently restricted, you're right, the person who owns that home may not have the liquidity to do constant repairs, but the benefit of owning it is that they can borrow against the equity of the home.
Yeah.
So they can make those repairs. They're capped on how much they can borrow against it. So in other words, I can't use my home if I borrow against it to start a business. In other words, that's how I want to use my ownership equity.
Or pay for a new roof.
So there's going to be a cap. So I'm not going to be able to take out of that property more than it's worth.
Okay.
And that was something that the state of Massachusetts learned about 10 years, 20 years ago when people were borrowing too much against these. So that is, the equity in ownership units is available to the owners. It's just not to the full extent that you might have.
That's great. I'm glad somebody's thought of that because, 75% of all people's wealth is in their house.
Right.
If you bought 20 years ago. But that's the thing, 20 years in the future, you want to have some of these people that, put their time and sweat into it, have them give, there's a brass ring out there, you can get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I am happy to hear, and I think we probably need to do more education on that piece of it so people can understand what they have. If you have one of those what did you say they were the program housing where you can borrow after certain amount of years that you're able to own that. And I think that's a way of generating wealth in people's life.
Definitely.
Last one of us look towards owning a home and be able to say, yes, it's mine. And you don't have to think a second time. If something has to be done, most people are going to jump right on it, make sure it's being repaired, make sure it's being kept up, because, in the future, you have it for your family. And that is such a great idea.
You have something to leave to your family.
Yes.
So I'm going to segue now into rental development. So the other thing that our funds, the trust funds and CPA funds can be used for is development of housing. And that has been historically the focus of what the trust has done in at least the past 4 years. The funds that that the trust has received from the CPA have typically gone towards the development of, and primarily rental housing, because if you think back to, maybe 10 years ago, the biggest issue that we've seen on the Cape is the shortage of housing, not just affordable low-income housing, but also affordable and attainable housing. So our focus, or I should say the trust's focus recently has been on the development of housing. And the quickest way, and the ones that have a quicker turnover, are rental housing. They also are at a lower entry level. So in other words, if you can't afford to buy a home, you hopefully are able to rent a home. So the development is the piece that we have been doing mostly. And in 2022, the trust issued 2021 issued a notice of funding availability. And that was their way of advertising to developers and builders and property owners that funds are available. And so from that, the majority of the grants that the town has, or that the trust has done, have been to development projects. And primarily those have been rental projects. Any questions about any of that? Because so the flip side of that also is that because they're rental, those are going to be perpetual deed restrictions as well. So the point would be that the property has the deed restriction on it, and the rents are controlled, not controlled, but they're going to remain affordable throughout the life of that property.
Who retains title to the property? Does the town take any title to these, or are they all the developers?
If the town acquires property, in other words, if we owned it, then we would have title to it. Typically what we're seeing is the applications are coming from people who own property and want to develop it. So the developer then owns that, maintains the title, and is responsible for that going forward. Any questions about that?
No,
No? Okay.
you can carry on.
Okay.
You need to.
Well, I guess, I just brought information. These are just paper documents, and I meant them so that you would have them as reference, because not everybody goes on a website or is sitting thinking about it. But if you have these things around, this is just an overview of what trusts can do, if you want to just pass those down. I also brought, this is the NOFA that the town has issued and updated. I'll just share that.
Sure. Thank you. I love hard copies of stuff.
I thought you might.
It's,
I do.
Some of us are still paper people.
I do.
And then I brought this because I wasn't sure how much you've delved into the housing production plan.
Thank you.
It's been presented to them, it's in draft form.
Okay. And this I just printed as being this is what was used at one of the public comment periods on the housing production plan. So I just give you this as, again, there's a lot to digest there, because at that point, I think these were early on, they had approximately, I think it was 30 different things that, or ideas, concepts, goals that could be done. And this was a community forum that was done early on with the housing production plan.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, we were at that together. So that's just basically, if you wanted to go back and see some of the things that the town has considered, and the town council and the planning board have reined these in. So this was really broad scale, and I think the plan is to come back with priorities from this, so that you really can whittle it down. And I think I'll just state most of what we've been doing is approaching from the supply side. It means, with a market issue like housing, primarily what we've been putting money and subsidy towards is increasing the supply. And the alternative to that, which I think in some of these is talked a little bit about, are things that would approach the demand side. We haven't really gone into that too much, but demand side would be like a rental assistance program, or those are more subsidies to not just meet the supply, but also make the demand meet the supply. In other words, if you have a voucher is a program that would be a demand side program. And so those are options, but they are not ones that we have particularly pursued. I'll just stop there and ask. I did want to give you this. This is the list of since 2022 when I came on. This is the list of the projects that the trust has undertaken, and it's a list of the number of units that each of those projects has created and the number that are permanently deed restricted within those projects. And then I'll just leave it up to you if you guys have things you want to discuss.
Thank you, these are useful information.
It's
very
just
useful.
backup, just so
Thank
you
you
have
very
it,
much.
just reference.
Okay.
Just awarded 2.5 million in state tax credits.
Yeah, they each did.
Does that include the update on the local, Corey, are you gonna do, which part of it are you doing on the update on local action units?
Yes,
Okay, you could go ahead, please.
sure.
If, sorry, if are you all finished with your portion, Jillian?
Well, I did want to say that one of the other things that Barnstable has done through the Plan Development Office is zoning changes that are an incentive to development, and also an inclusionary regulation. So that when units are developed, even if it's a market rate development, that there's a 10% of those units that would be reserved. And I don't know if you were going to talk about that, but for affordable rentals.
You can go ahead, Corey, please.
Sure.
I just wanted to, there's nothing voted on and there's no anything about the Veterans Home. I'm on the board of directors, so I just, for Cape and Island veterans. I just
yes.
wanted, if there was anything that was coming up, I would abstain.
No.
Yes, and currently there is not. That project, the Cape and Islands Vets, that was a project that was actually done in the town of Dennis. And Barnstable contributed through the trust funds towards that, so it was considered a regional project.
Dennis contributed a lot too.
Yeah, it was actually many towns, I think there were 8 towns that
Oh.
contributed towards that, so that's another option that when you look at the different goals and things that you can do in a production plan, they don't always have to be right within your bounds, they can be regional. And that's one of the things that the Cape is moving towards, is looking at housing more as a regional issue.
Another question, I don't want to take too much time, but the idea of affordable housing, everybody thinks that, okay, it's affordable. I'm not sure that even if you use the 80% and the 30%, what is the average rent that we have currently? Just an estimate, ballpark figure.
I actually don't know what the average rent in Barnstable is. I would venture to guess that probably that's a very fluid
That's
number.
That's fine.
But the 80%, oh gosh, and I did not bring that number.
I bet it's over that
AMI.
30% though.
I think the last time
Yeah.
was like, what, 1,800 for a 2-bedroom?
I think it was.
I think that's more like a one
Bedroom,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
so that if that was the 1-bedroom, I think the 2-bedroom were like 2,200.
Yeah.
That
I
sounds
think
As-
it's
as
hovering
far as I
around-
can
think
remember.
It's hovering around that.
Yes.
As an average price.
And what exactly is affordable about
30%,
2,200?
right?
For
Of your
the type
income?
of jobs that
Is
are
that what
here,
it is?
not Boston.
Yes, 30%,
You know.
you're supposed to be spending 30% of your income on housing.
Yep.
That's,
People are spending like 60, more like 60%
Yeah.
now.
And I could just, that number, that percentage of your annual income, that comes from also banks and financing institutions. They are looking also at how much you're spending when you go to borrow to buy a home, or if you, it's intended to ensure that you have the remaining 70% of your income for your daily.
Right.
So it's,
It used to be 32%, and
Yeah.
in that, they included your your car loan and everything else. They wanted you to have a 70 or 68% for your utilities, for maintenance, you know.
And the utilities are included, and when we look at through the mass guidelines, we're looking at utilities as being included in what we consider the affordable rent.
Okay.
And if they're not, there's a calculation for.
Just a quick question. So is it the 30% of just one person, or would it be like a couple, or
It would
the
be the
household?
household income.
I got it.
So it's, if you have 4 people living in a home, and 2 of them are earning, then you would look at the income for the,
Oh, okay.
you know, it's the whole, you take both incomes into account for the 4-person household. If
Are there
only
any
two.
studio apartments for rent? Okay, because that's, you know, going back to college, you know, all I wanted was a room and shut the door. I didn't need 2 bedrooms or, you know.
Yeah, there are some coming online.
Oh, good.
In the next couple of years.
Good.
Yeah, there are.
And those will be
more
cheaper,
developments.
those will be less expensive.
Yes, definitely,
I don't know if they're still affordable, they're gonna be less
Right.
expensive.
correct, definitely.
Wow,
Okay, Corey.
Well, whatever we can do to help.
So quickly on the local action units update, we just had 50 Yarmouth Road was approved by EOHLC. So it's, 2 units out of that development were approved to be put on the subsidized housing inventory. That was recently done. I still have 5 forms that are into the state, and I spoke with an official at state today regarding one of the forms and just some clarity on a certificate of occupancy. But hopefully, you know, that's 52 collective units that can go in the SHI, and hopefully that will be approved sometime soon. So that's 57 Ridgewood Drive and then 185 Ridgewood. And the 850 residences, Harbor House 2 and Hanover. So those are the 5 different projects that I have new unit forms in to EOHLC. So
What, can you repeat them for me, please?
57 Ridgewood, 185 Ridgewood, and the 850 residences on
Okay.
Falmouth Road,
Falmouth Road, okay.
and the Harbor House 2. That's 206 Breeds Hill Road, and the Hanover. That's on 99 Wilkins Lane.
And in total, how much do we have?
It'll be 52 units.
And these are coming on stream.
Hopefully they'll be, they're online. I think Hanover just submitted the occupancy permit at the end of October. So those will be, they should be available for rent. And so those are 52 units collectively that will be on our subsidized housing inventory.
Just comment, 57 Ridgewood was funded using CPA funds, so there was money that went from the town to support that project. Same for 850 residences, that was a grant of 1.4 million from the trust to develop that property. And then the other one that Corey mentioned that's in process, 50 Yarmouth, that's a total of 15 units. And that received 500,000 from the trust to support the 2 units that are affordable.
Great, that's good news.
Yep.
It's
Can I
really
just
nice,
ask-
we get around 7 million, wow.
That's over the course of several years, yes, since I wanna say the first one listed on there might be 2021 allocation, but
This one here for Hack Duffy, it says to be determined.
yeah, that
So what's going on with that?
there was a project that came before, so the Housing Assistance Corporation applied to the trust, and they at that time were seeking to produce I forget it was a resource center, and it was primarily going to include shelter beds The town, the trust voted to support it, but the location, originally it was going to be in Hyannis, and I think now that they have changed the location. The reason it's still showed on there is because typically shelter beds are considered a regional resource. So the trust, my understanding is that they view that as something that if they came back with a location, regardless of where that might be, that the trust would look favorably on that project.
So it says 60 units, so you mean 60 beds?
That was 60 beds. Their project at the time was proposing 60 beds.
That's pretty big.
That's nice.
It was.
It's much needed.
And the site, again, is no longer going to be in Hyannis. My understanding is that their site in Dennis, is it Dennis? I think Dennis is where they're thinking that's going to be.
Oh, that's
So
excellent.
it's kind of a fluid thing.
Is that the one we started to hear about at the last housing committee with Mr. Bornstein?
No.
Wasn't that the 60 and he was gonna have someone from HAC come back the next week?
No, that's a different
yeah, it's a
project,
different-
and
That was another
that
project.
was not, that's not Housing Assistance
Yeah.
Corporation, that's a separate project.
Yeah.
You can keep all these things straight.
So
That's
what was
good.
this supposed to be? Is it like a shelter? Is it a shelter?
It would include a shelter. It also had support beds. So in other words, if a person went there needing, because it was coordinated with Duffy, if you needed a place to stay, say you were homeless and released from the hospital and needed, you don't have a place to go. So it wasn't just a overnight shelter. It was more for people who were in dire need of a place to stay if they were recuperating or. But again, that project is fluid now. It's not, it has not been fully identified. And again, it's just staying on our book as a placeholder at this point. It's not, so the actual location and when they have a location and if that project, if the description of it has changed, they'll come back and explain that.
Yeah, I just saw the 6 units and I'm like, that's amazing. You know what I mean? That's a lot of units, but it's just.
It would have been,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah, that's, yeah, so.
So is that all, Corey, on that portion?
Yes.
The Regional Housing Service subsidized housing inventory update. Do we have an update on
Great.
that?
Sure. Yeah, are you aware of the shared regional housing services program
Not a
at
lot.
all? So it's a pilot program that's being run through the county, Barnstable County. And it's really, it's a 2-year program, funded for 2 years currently. But it's hoping to initiate a regional housing services program for the 15 Cape communities. And essentially providing housing assistance for communities on Cape Cod for towns that don't have the staffing in order to maintain subsidized housing inventory and just housing services in general when it comes to housing development and affordability. So currently we are, that's supposed to end in June of 2025. And it's being led by Barrett Planning Group currently. And so hopefully, this pilot program is looking to establish it as a permanent program. And so each community has been given 30 hours of time from this pilot program. And so our planning development thought that those 30 hours could be utilized for really straightening out our subsidized housing inventory and getting our monitoring underway, figuring out who's monitoring the units currently, so we don't have like a good grip on that. So that's kind of where we're at currently, and hopefully we'll have a better idea of whether or not this will be a permanent program within the next, hopefully by June. Jillian could also speak about it as well.
I'll add because, so the Home Consortium, which is it's where where Barnstable County receives federal funds towards housing. This program started up with ARPA funds, so it was the whole region looked at and the county helping the region basically by saying where would it be best to utilize these ARPA regional funds. And that this program, if it was it's available to 15 towns within Barnstable County. The way that they have set it up is that it would be by an intermunicipal agreement. So each town on the Cape would have to decide whether they want to participate or not. And they talked this morning about whether, what are sort of menu options if only 5 towns participated, what would that look like? If all 15 towns participate, what will that look like? And so the variety of the needs of all the Cape towns, I mean, they spread from like a Barnstable where we have lots and lots of housing and lots of units that we're monitoring. And then a town like Truro that has a very small amount that they're overseeing. So it's a wide range. And it's, again, as an intermunicipal agreement, if the county has been talking about whether it would be the county that would be the lead entity or whether it would be a different entity. Right now, I think it's kind of envisioned that would start out with the county would oversee that. And if that was the case, then they would do the other thing that we often talk about when we're dealing with housing is Chapter 30B, which is the way that we acquire. Municipalities governments have to go through a bidding process. So in this case, we would, the county or the lead entity would produce a request for proposals. And the request for proposals basically goes out and asks people to, if they will provide these services, what would they charge, how would they provide them? So that's the process that would come next, that a request for proposals would be issued. And there may be private entities that, or nonprofit entities that would be able to bid on this. And depending, how that shakes out, and the cost to each of the towns would vary. And I think the range estimate today was anywhere between like a $4,000 base price up to perhaps for a very complicated undertaking, maybe as much as $45,000. So it's a big range. Did you follow?
Yeah,
Did
definitely.
I say that properly? Okay. Because I know Corey has been our delegate to be working on this, and I've just been sort of tuning in when.
No, we are happy to
He
have
missed
Corey
the meeting
because
this
for a
morning, so-
while we haven't had anybody, and so that's why for a while we weren't having meetings. So
we had one
you have
meeting
been
last
very resourceful and very helpful during our preparing our meeting and the process of finding out information. So I must say a very big thank you for doing what you're doing and for the town of Barnstable. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think speaking for both of us, we're glad. It's our passion.
I'm glad to have Jillian here. She's
Yes.
got a lot of.
She has a lot of resources and has been in the business long enough to teach us and show us some of the different ways and means.
It is very complicated, and I think a lot of people think that it's a very simple process. All you need to do is build more housing, but it's not that simple. It's very
It's
complicated.
extremely complicated.
Yeah.
It's very expensive.
So that would be great when we have that service being established. We'll have a better handle of how many units we are, where are the units, are they being maintained? And I think the town need to be aware of that and, so we can have an update and know what our needs are.
Yeah.
So that would be very good to come on board.
Through the chair, can I ask, Corey, did you want to talk at all about the production of basically market rate housing? Because that's been something that I think is not touted enough. I mean, the town is doing an extraordinary job of incentivizing housing production. It's
Right.
not something that the other Cape towns are doing, so I think it's important to kind of give a shout out when we can.
Oh yeah, well I could actually provide maybe next meeting or the meeting after we
Okay.
can show you what's what's going on with unit production in town since the zoning change that we had to allow for more market rate housing and affordable housing through the zoning change. So I think we just
That would be
recently
helpful.
put together a presentation on that, and it was pretty
It's
pretty
impressive.
educational, yeah.
There's a lot that the town has
We'll
done.
be more than happy to have that, you know.
Yeah,
The information we have, it's progress for us, where we move and where we move. I know we try to go about helping each other and helping this community to grow as we expand.
yeah, we've been pretty successful lately with tax increment exemption, the housing development incentive program through the state, where it helps incentivize market rate housing. So there's been a lot of unit production that way as well. And a lot of those developments that are being incentivized are also within the map of where we're allowed to have more affordable housing produced through those developments. So that's been pretty active lately.
Okay. The Cape Cod Ready Renters Lottery, what is that we need to do more?
So that's a program run through by Mary Wagan in the town of Yarmouth. And it's kind of affirmative fair marketing program as well as lottery to provide, people that are income eligible with new rental housing that's coming online or has been online and it's part of the lottery process. It's run through the Plymouth Redevelopment Authority, the lottery processes. So there are 2 dates coming up where Mary will do an informational session here at Town Hall.
Okay,
One on January 28th at 6 p.m. In the James Crocker hearing room.
okay.
That's at 6 p.m. And she'll be giving an informational session and running a lottery and kind of showing what units are available for rent through the lottery process. And also on February 11th at 11 a.m. here as well. Since Barnstable's part of this, the Ready Renters program, we provide space for these informational sessions and lotteries.
That'd be awesome.
So that's coming up.
Is that for the whole Cape or just Barnstable?
It's for
Like
the
for
whole, it's for all the communities that do participate. I believe Yarmouth, Dennis, Barnstable, Orleans, Falmouth.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
I'm sure they get a lot of applications for that, huh?
I believe so, yeah.
Must be
Yeah, the
overwhelming.
wait lists are very, very long,
Yeah.
Expensive.
years long.
Just to be able to
Qualify.
get into the lottery, or?
So the
Qualify.
ready renter list is, if you're income eligible, you can apply to be put on the list. And then you're notified when lottery units are available. So you then apply for each of those lotteries. It's and because they're in different towns, you might apply for one, but you might not apply for the other. But by being on that ready renter list, you're given kind of a tracked information, if you will, so that you know about these things. So it's really intended to connect the people that are needing houses. Or in most cases, it's a voucher that you might have that you get on a list to find and to place your voucher. And not all of the units are, they have different ranges as well.
Do they do this lottery every year, or is it every so often, or
It's when
depends
things
on
are
the?
available.
Okay.
So the units have to be there in order to do the lottery. And I should say, when turnovers occur, they are not doing, typically, it's not a lottery for just a single unit. That's the purpose of the wait list. You would go
Yes.
back to the wait list, and people who are
Next
on
in
that
line,
list would
yeah.
then apply for a unit that might come up, or a turnover, if you will.
Are people on the wait list, to justify the income, or is it just somebody going on January 2nd and somebody going on January 3rd? Is there,
No, it has to match, so if it's a deed restricted unit, the person who is applying has to be eligible for that unit. So if it's, let's say it was a low income unit, you can't make more than 50% of median income. If it's an 80%, you can go up to 80%. So these are all sort of different thresholds that make
I
you.
guess we have to do that, but I really hate to have everything means tested. I'm on some other boards and some people refuse pay increases, refuse because it would cost them more to, it's just in principle, we've got to do this for housing, I understand.
I think what we need to do is a new threshold because the economy has changed. The cost of living has changed dramatically. So I think that's the first thing that needs to be done, in my opinion, is to redo that. Because anybody who, it is so tight now. If you make a mere $60,000-$70,000, it's like you're barely getting by. Barely getting by. And so this list that we have had over the years, which was like, probably 20 years ago, it's not matching up with what's going on now. Kind of understand what I mean? In the sense that earning and being qualified, because now you may be making more, so the 50% threshold or the low income, that used to be like, say, 40 to 50,000, now it's low income is now more, I would say, 70 to 80,000. That's what I would justify as low income. To balance out, we're so far behind in putting things together to match with what's going on today.
And the real problem is the average house is 700,000 or so,
600,000.
690 something.
Yeah.
And that 60, 70 you're talking about, that might be a couple with kids too,
Yes.
you know what I mean?
Yes.
Which is even tighter, you know,
Tighter.
so, yeah.
Yes.
You know.
So the gap and the income gap and the reality of living,
So
cost
you need
effectiveness.
100,000 to buy a house, and then you have no furniture on it, and you have a $500,000 mortgage.
Yes.
I don't know how we solve, so there's nothing easy, just build
Yeah.
more. It's like, thank God we got, the growth folks here. It's almost, we're trying to, demand and the law of demand and supply, we're trying to overturn it. It's not easy.
I think there's still progress. We're making little moves and progress in even getting in these units and what's being prepared. So, all is not lost. Hope is not lost. It may be slow, but we're coming in slowly.
Yeah.
And as long as we can keep making steps and keep moving forward, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, but the tough thing is, the lotteries and all these different things, what happens if you need housing now? You know what I mean?
Well, that's the trouble.
I can't wait a year, I can't wait 2 years, or I can't wait for this to be built, so
That's it, they're gonna be homeless in a week. They
Yes.
need-
Yeah, that's, to me, that's what I see that quite a bit. And
A lot
It's
more.
tough,
So that is definitely the supply side, and that's why our policies have gone so much towards funding the production of housing to bring more on. And in theory, if a market rate unit becomes available and I'm occupying a unit that is a lower rent, if I'm working and getting maybe a little bit of a pay increase, or my circumstances have changed, I may be able to move to that higher rent apartment, vacating the lower one, making it available. So that's the concept, but
Yeah, but if you make that little bit more money and you move up, you're in the same
You're
spot.
gonna go in the same spot.
Yeah, it's gonna be just as tight, so, and that's frustrating too, so hey, I make an extra 10, 20 grand a year, but now I have to get a more expensive place because I'm kicked out of here because how I made, you know what I mean?
that's a
It's
good point.
like a dog chasing his tail sometimes.
In most cases, you're right, the incomes have not kept up with the costs of rent. But that is right now, that is a national issue, it's not
Yes.
just here.
No, absolutely. I
So
get
it
that,
is,
yeah.
It's a state responsibility, not not ours, but the laws on landlord and tenant. I read, and you probably have more document, as you said, you're a paper person, the seasonal homes. I saw 35% all the homes.
Yeah. So you-
35, could it be that much?
It
Certain
is,
communities,
certainly.
yes.
So the component, you talk about seasonal communities, that's a component of the Affordable Homes Act in Massachusetts. So they have just established the advisory council that will help all of the seasonal communities, basically any community that has over 35% or 35% of their housing stock that is rented on a seasonal or only occupied on a seasonal basis, that
I know a lot of people that won't rent it. It's empty for 9 months. Because you're not gonna get them out in June. It just, with any, perseverance at all, you can put the eviction off, 4 months, 5 months,
so
easy.
that's one
Easy.
of the things that
The 30-day notice, they rip, the judgment, they rip. There's a whole rigmarole on but it's a state thing, but we'll probably never change the landlord and tenant laws, but it just seems like that would be, there's empty houses out there and you get people that need a place tomorrow. But
No, you're correct, but the tough thing is, they're in there for 6, 7 months or whatever, and they know they have to leave and they still can't find anything. So that's the worst time of year to find a place to live, and they're like, I'm gonna jack this up to $2,000 a week or whatever, you have to leave.
And they won't get out.
That's tough for both people, so.
And they won't get out, you're not gonna
Yeah,
lose your
that's,
family.
I never
That
thought of
is
that, actually, that's a good point.
a
Yeah.
unique
They're between a rock
concern
and a hard place.
of seasonal communities. So that is a component that I think that we'll be talking about. What are the ways that we address that not just in each of every community, a seasonal community has a slightly different issue that they might be facing. But that's I guess the point would be if the need is a way to educate people so that they understand as a property owner how to rent that. In other words, if what's preventing me from renting my property is fear, that should be something that we can address with programs that
Education.
And so I think that's one of the pieces. Programs are also a way. The town of Provincetown has a program that they're undergoing that would be what they call rent local. And so they have, they're working very hard to subsidize rentals that would be to year-round tenants. And so there are ways to do this, but they are programmatic and not necessarily.
Well, I get it though, if you can make all your money in 3 months, why have somebody live in there for the rest of the year and do the maintenance and stuff like that when you're only gonna make a fraction, so I work for 3 months, charge whatever a week. I get it if somebody doesn't wanna do that either though,
Short-term
so.
rentals.
Especially if that's why you buy the property, is to make that money for those 3 or 4 months or whatever, so I get that too.
Okay, we're coming
For
up
full
close.
disclosure, I have a small cottage and I close it up since 1987. You don't let anyone in there because I can't get anyone out. It's for my grandkids. They go down in June. It's awful. I feel like a traitor on the housing committee. But
Well, we'll work on you.
But no landlord and tenant law.
But again, it's your place,
That's,
Yes.
you're more than welcome to do whatever you want with it, you shouldn't feel
no, I'm
bad.
supposed to be helping.
All right, list of town-owned properties. Did we get any answers, any info on that?
So I did receive a list late this afternoon, quite an extensive list, so I guess we have to kind of parse out, your
Okay.
intent.
All right,
Can we have it next time?
Well, it's like a 75-page list, so
Oh,
for to print out, it would be really, inefficient. And to look at just addresses, we have to figure
Vacant.
out,
so
you would kind of
probably
have to
narrow it
figure
down
out
to
like,
vacant lots.
yes, Yeah,
That
that's
would be
kind of,
more,
yeah, I think that's a lot more reasonable
Okay.
to try to.
Well,
so
that
the
brings
next, for
to-
our next meeting, we could just do what's vacant.
Sure.
Or, not only vacant, but if there is others that can be developed further. Something that we probably could do, an additional building or something like that, we don't have to do the whole list that's completed. Vacant are for those that probably could do some adjustments to,
Sure, yeah,
Please, and
that's
thank
something
you.
we could talk about with Jim,
yes.
figure out how we can proceed with this.
75 pages sounds like that might be a lot of properties. Why do we have so many?
They
Town-owned properties.
include all sorts of things like
Yes.
Schools and stuff.
pump stations
Yeah.
and yeah,
Housing authority, yes,
roads and, all
Yeah.
sorts of different things, access
Okay.
drives and,
Yeah.
they're,
So it'd be
town
more,
properties are
more,
many things.
I would say vacant properties that are buildable, something that we can look into, or other properties that, maybe we can make other buildings on, if it had more open space or whatever it is.
yeah, that would be a more
Yes.
intensive
Yes.
study.
I'm sorry, I didn't do it more
Yeah.
specifically, I should have.
Yeah,
said
I don't know if
specifically.
that even can be completed in a month, so I mean, that's something that, yeah, we can start with a basic list.
Yes.
And move from there,
Okay,
and kind of, whittle down the mission.
narrow it down,
Yeah,
yes.
narrow it
Yeah,
down,
yeah,
definitely.
if you could whittle it down to
Yeah,
Yeah, just
reasonable.
buildable places, open lots or spaces.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'd like to see the whole list. I mean, just what she said, there's gotta be so much on there, that sounds cool.
Visually, would you, I think that there is a GIS map of town-owned land. Would that be more beneficial to actually see where those are as opposed to a list of,
How big would the map be?
on a screen, I would say
Well, no,
yes,
I'm saying 75 pages on
Yeah.
one map, it's
Well,
gonna be
there
all
would
one.
be so
It'd
much
be
smaller,
it'd be parcel
Yeah,
smaller,
database.
so database.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's,
Or it could be electronic and you can zoom in, I guess is what I'm, because GIS, you don't have to have a paper, you could,
yeah, that'd be great, yeah.
yeah, we can figure out a delivery method that's
Okay.
pretty efficient.
That'd be great. Next, upcoming regulatory agreement application for Dockside Residence Stuart Bornstein. In lieu of the provision requesting for housing committee recommendation, chapter 9 affordable housing, section 6. Any words on that?
So at your next meeting, hopefully we can narrow down a date for January for you guys. There'll be a public hearing for this regulatory agreement. So last meeting, we kind of had an informal review of a different proposal. And that's no longer moving forward. I think he's, the regulatory agreement now will be for the 10 units that Shoestring Property owes towards for the
Dockside.
town. So yeah, there's 2 units at the Cape Cod Times building and 3 units at Dockside. And then 3 units at 310 Barnstable Road. And the applicant is seeking to take 5 off-site units and put them into 310 Barnstable Road, which also 310 Barnstable Road owes 3 units, so it's 10 total. So that will be what the regulatory agreement will be asking for. So that will be before you in January.
Okay,
for
No
your
problem.
review.
thank you.
And that will be a recommendation to the planning board from you guys.
Thank you.
And so that kind of leads me to, and then further down on the agenda is trying to narrow down a meeting date for you guys, which we can do that when we get to that on the agenda.
Update on town council subcommittees.
So it's lost into that.
the phone to read it down.
23rd or 30
Oh, yeah.
for the next
Yeah, it's
What makes
kind of what makes sense. Those are both dates are on
20.
Thursday.
Okay,
But we could wait till we get to that agenda item, I guess, since it's,
okay, so any update on the town council subcommittees?
I don't have an update at this time.
Okay. All right, so can we move for the approval of our minutes and?
I was just gonna say, so
mean,
the last one that we attended, I think they were gonna narrow down some priorities.
Yes.
And so that the housing, the town council's subcommittee on housing, and they were gonna focus on the housing production plan. So they had all the different recommendations, and then they were gonna narrow it down to, I think it was
4.
several that they were going to bring back and prioritize, or perhaps
Yes.
the whole town council would. And then I guess those would be sort of marching orders for all of us who are tasked with
Yes,
creating the
yes,
housing.
exactly. So that's the committee to assess and recommend
And
strategies for
recommendation, yes.
housing creation within town, which Hilda is on.
Which I'm part of.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right, of course.
So we had 7.
I'm sorry, I forgot that.
So I think we initially had 7 or 8 recommendations, and I think it grew to maybe 9 or 10 afterwards, so I think
I think
You guys
within
are
our
coming
next
back?
meeting,
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
coming back to do kind of a semi-final list to get it down closer to the numbers that we need to. Because we're gonna prioritize things and we're gonna work on things can be done right now, not in the long term, but short and effective. So we know the next meeting we'll be doing just about that. The next, I'll ask for the approval of minutes for September 24th,
I
2024.
So moved.
I wasn't able to get the minutes together, so we'll have that for next meeting.
We'll
So
hold for the
we
next
will
meeting.
move that to next
Contingent.
meeting, yeah.
Okay, so then we'll just try to, next meeting date, you had put 2 days out here for January 23rd or the 30th.
You guys email me, I'll be here, it doesn't matter.
Okay, I guess it depends on Hilda and Don.
So which day?
It's up to you guys to select.
Chairperson ought to
Let me just
take the
take a
day.
peek real quick on my calendar, real quick and see.
I'm just a soldier, I follow along.
That's what I'm saying, just
You let-
email me,
you let me
I'm
know.
good. No issues here.
Ready and willing.
I literally live 30 seconds that way, so.
We could do the 23rd if that's okay with everybody.
Sure. Is there a particular time that is
Yep.
helpful? 4, 5,
Actually, that 4 o'clock would be good.
4 o'clock?
Yeah, well, I'm supposed to get out of work at like 4, but I can leave early, so it's not a big deal, so.
Okay, I mean,
So
That's
the
fine.
4 o'clock.
23rd at 4 o'clock, yeah, I
Okay.
like 4 o'clock myself. 1600, Chris.
Thank you, sir.
Great.
Apologize about the phone earlier.
No, we're
It's
fine.
it's one of the newer ones that used to have a button on the side that would turn it off, but now you have to go into the phone.
Alright, so let's, items not reasonable anticipated 48 hours in advance of the meeting. Gonna move that meeting be adjourned.
So moved.
Thank you.
Adjourned?
You want a
Second.
Second, sure.
Okay,
All in favor?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out. I hope each and every one of us have a beautiful, beautiful holiday
Yes.
season coming up and
You as
see
well.
us all in the new year.
When was the last one?